Hello Internet, I'm Callum.
Hey, I'm James.
And joining us today is special guest Henry Percy, also known as Harry Hotspur.
He's very small.
He's very small, he's very shy.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's our latest Giants in miniature model and he was a real joy to paint. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we are. Callum did an excellent job on this figure.
Well, thank you, sir.
Some very good realistic metals, some nice freehand details.
Some crazy freehand on there.
Yeah, there is. He's got quite a complex crest.
He does.
His heraldry's not easy.
I'll have to blame him for that.
Yeah, that's all his family's fault. But yeah, we'll take a quick peek at it. But also, if you want to see the full painting process for this figure, you can already in a PDF, which we've got up for our Wargames Illustrated Prime members on our website right now. If you're not a Prime member, it only costs £1 for the first month of Prime membership, so why not have a look? If you really don't want to be a Prime member though, we're not going to hold it against you. You can see this in the magazine at some point in the future.
So on this spin, you can really see the benefit of this method that we're using. So we're using true metallic, so you are still getting some of that shine that comes with the pigment in there, but we're also drawing in the shadow ourselves because we want to kind of add an additional contrast, a bit more definition to those shapes. It really helps give another level and another dimension to what is quite sometimes flat metallic painting.
Yes, I mean, he's got a lot of armour going on, so it's important that you really make those metals sing. He's also got his heraldry on his back there, which is visible, very small, quite deceptive when you look at the photos of Harry that we've taken, because you're not seeing the actual size. It's really teeny.
It's also very muted as well, because it had to fit in. It didn't want to distract from the fact that he's in full plate armour. It was very interesting to try and do a very, as you say, small, intricate, and then kind of just wash it right out.
And you've also done quite a nice detailed realistic looking face in there with some glazes, washes of colour.
Yeah, so it was quite a simple face at the start, and then we've just brought in some colours at the end through some glazes just to give it a bit more of that realism.
And one thing that we ummed and ahed on was whether to douse his sword in blood, because there are some historians seem to think that Harry actually kept his massive sword covered with blood and gore to put the fear into his foes, but we ultimately decided not to do that, just to let your effects shine out, really. Talking of shine, let's take a look at Callum replicating his metallic effects on another Harry Hotspur figure. He started his painting with an airbrushed zenithal base coat, which goes from black to white, but now over to Callum.
So for the base coat of the armour, we're going to be using Scale 75's Thrash Metal. And we're also going to be mixing that with some Citadel Abaddon Black. We're basically just to tone it down, mute it, because we don't want it to be too shiny at this stage. Now we're going to mix these in a roughly 2:1 ratio. You'll see me mix it here on my palette. And for this, I'm just using a slightly worn out brush. It's not my finest tip, but it's still got a fairly accurate needle on it because we want to be careful in our application here. What we're also going to do is we're going to take a lot of water and thin this down because we want to see some of the zenithal highlight through. We don't want to completely obliterate that at this stage. Because we're working with watery paint, we obviously test on our thumb first, or wherever you'd like to test it, and then we apply it straight onto the model, just like that. Nice, thin, quick coat. Because it's watery, don't let it pool too much, because again, this will still destroy the effect of the zenithal. For this tutorial, I'm just focusing on one leg, but as you'll actually read in the PDF article, I do try to recommend that you work on an appendage at a time, because you can see the light values of the other one. It helps guide you. So for this stage, we're going to start glazing onto the model. So I grabbed some Citadel Contrast Medium. I use this because I just quite like the finish of it. And we're also going to take some of the black that's left on the palette. So we start with the black because we want to control how much we put into the mix. And then start drawing in your contrast medium. We want this to be very thin, very, translucent. We don't want to go too heavy at this stage. A good glaze is built up in several thin layers. So it's crucial you test this on your thumb or a piece of paper first so you can see what kind of opacity you've got. As you can see here, we're just tinting my nail slightly. I'm happy with this mix. So I'm going to start applying it to the model. Now we are focusing on the shadows, that's the idea here. So you want to really use the zenithal highlight that you've already created for yourself. Use that to guide you. I recommend that you also get some reference imagery from online of how plate armour reacts to light, because it'll guide you to create some accurate lighting. So again, we're not letting this pool, we're just glazing it on, and really as you work across the leg here, once you flip to the other side, the first one should be dry. That's how thin the coats want to be. And that's what really is quite nice and effective about this technique, is that once you've put it on, it dries almost immediately, so you can build it up quite quickly. I'm focusing on areas such as bottom of the kneecap, just underneath the knee where it would obviously just collect in the crease. The bottom of the shins, there's a slight dip there, we want to catch that. And any of the recessed areas will also just receive a little bit. So what I'm doing now is adding a little bit more black for the darker recesses, so we want to create a bit more of a tint to this glaze, and this is really focused towards the darkest areas. So this is the very bottom of the knees, that deepest recess on the shins there, and also the recesses of the foot. Be much more refined with the application of this step. For the final few layers, you really just want to be touching the almost like a thin line at the very darkest points you want to create. So as you can see here, it's just the very bottom of the knee, a concentric ring around the shin at the bottom there, and also just those recesses on the foot towards the floor where the shadows would gather. We've got some nice definition in the darker areas, but we've obviously muted the shine down quite a lot. So we're going to fix that with this next stage now. So we're going to return to our base mix of thrash metal and Abaddon black. We're going to thin this down with a little bit of medium, so we'll retain some of the properties of the paint, but we're also going to add in some water as well. We're essentially creating a glaze of our mid-tone, because what we want to do is cut back in for any areas that you've gone too far with the darker glazing. On mine, I'm not quite happy, obviously it's a bit too dark in areas. That's the beauty of this glazing technique, you can really go backwards and forwards and keep fiddling until you're really happy with the result. So I'm focusing mine towards the top of the knees, obviously top of the legs, just above the thigh. We want areas where the light's going to gather. Again, use the other leg if you'd like as reference. You can look at it and see. That's why I quite like painting them one at a time. Again, don't let this pool. You want thin coats here. So what you want to do is apply and then drag away from the area you don't want to get paint into. So for these, I'm starting almost at the midpoint and dragging up to the top of the plate, because I don't want to have the paint run down into any of my shadows. You can really control the paint flow using this. But now we're going to return to some pure thrash metal, because we want to really give this plate some shine. So, thin down with some water. I've tested this here, it's actually a little too thin, I put a bit too much water in, so I'm going to draw back into the paint. There we go, that's much better. So this is more of a line highlight towards the top of the panels. Again, top of the knee, top of the thigh, top of the shin. A lot of tops here. We want to be quite selective with this. Too much and you'll make the armour shine too much, and the contrast will be thrown and it won't sell the effect. Here's a little tip here, you want to catch the bottom of the shin there, because the greave almost curves back out, so obviously that would catch some light. It'd be a stark contrast, but if it's applied correctly, it'll look really nice. I'm also doing a little bit of edge highlighting because I can't shake that. So I've just made a slip there. I'm going to go back to my previous shade mix of just the black and medium. Again, this is the benefit of using this and using a wet palette. I can just return to my colours quickly, fix any mistakes and move on. So now we're going to be applying our highlights, which is heavy metal from scale 75. As you can see, it's much brighter than the thrash metal. It's also got more of a purer shine to it. It's much more white metal, which will be great for reflections from the sky. So again, thin it down with some water, just a touch. We want to control this one. We don't want it as a glaze, because we could lose control and really ruin pretty much all the work we've done so far. You have to go back and glaze, and so just be careful here. We want the highest points, the highest sharp lines there. So I'm just doing top of the knee, very top. We want any sharp points like the foot. So there's a really sharp point to the triangle of the foot there. You definitely want a nice highlight on that. That would be catching all the light. And you can see, just looking at this model as I'm painting, we've got really nice bright points and really nice shadow. Just visually you can see the contrast. That's the benefit of working with metallic paints like this. You can really add another dimension to them. I'll move it around a little bit for you to see. And I'm going to check it under my own lamp just to see if I'm happy. So you can see here we've got a really nice graduation. We've got a very bright highlight to a very dark colour very quickly, but because we built it up in stages, it's transitioned very smoothly. It's not out of place, and I think we've got a really nice result. but I think we can elevate this paint job a little bit more. So on the one I did for Wargames Illustrated, we had some green tufts on the base. So what I did is I used a few green glazes to reflect and place the model in the location, because obviously plate metal would reflect anything that's surrounding the model. But we don't want to go with green this time. I want to show you something new. So I'm going to take my technical contrast medium and also some Fire Giant Orange from the Speed Paint range. Speed paint and contrast paint are really great for glazing like this because they've got high pigment density, but you can thin them right down. They're not too thick. They apply very smoothly as glazes. So I'd really recommend you grab some for this. So again, we'll start with contrast medium. Clean my brush off. And then I'm going to start with Fire Giant Orange. A little bit on my palette there. So again, start with your colour that you're going to thin, get a little bit, and then draw in the contrast medium. That way you're not going to overload whatever you've mixed before. So I'll test this, mix it on my brush. Again, I'm using an old brush because glazes like this tend to run down to the bottom of the bristles, and you will end up ruining nice brushes, so I'm using an older one here. Testing here, I think that's quite nice. So what we're going to do is think about where the light is coming from. I want it just in front of the foot on the left, his right foot. So what it would be catching is the right leg here. Just as the surface curves upward, it would catch the bottom of the kneecap and also some of those rivets just below the knee as well. We're going to build this up gradually because silver is very, very clean. There's not much colour in it. So when you apply a glaze, you want to be careful you don't overload it because any colour will contrast very quickly. I'm going to apply a bit more, want a bit more intensity on this point here as it's closer to the flame, or imaginary flame in this case. And to be honest, I think I'm going to just stick with the Fire Giant Orange there because I'm really happy with the effect we've got. That was a quick, simple glazing effect to really plant your models on the base.
So there you go, Callum's painting approach for the metals on Harry. Hopefully you picked up some that you can use on your own figures there, maybe on this very figure, which is available right now on the Wargames Illustrated website. And if you're a Prime member, you also get a discount on this and every other Giants in miniature as well. So that's Prime, but while people are pondering whether they want that Prime membership, there is something else they can do completely for free, isn't there, Callum?
They could like this video and they could subscribe.
They could, and also they could ring that bell.
And if they ring that bell, they'll see us when we're sat here again, immediately, in their notifications.
So apologies for that, everyone.
See you then.
This video has been brought to you by WiPrime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WiPrime by following these links.